What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto changes after Mizuki? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Good thing I'm such an awesome ninja. Bet Sasuke Teme wouldn't be able to do something like this. One Uzumaki Naruto thought to himself as he held his body up flat against the ceiling, left hand gripped tightly around the corner of a wooden support beam. His right held the lockpicks he hadn't had time to put away, and clutched between his feet was all the scroll Mizuki-sensei had given him with a map of guard patrol routes and a drawing of his mission target. The blonde ninja to be held this pose, making no noise except for the near-silent breathing and heartbeat that he himself could barely hear, for a further 30 seconds until the passing Chunin patrol guard was sure to be out of earshot, then dropped silently to the floor. He chuckled to himself quietly. No one ever thinks to look up. He might get in trouble for his pranks, but he learned a lot more from them than he ever would have just listening to Iruka-sensei's boring lectures. 9 minutes 54 seconds left until the next guard got there. More than enough time to finish up the door lock, find the scroll, and get out of the building. He started up with the lockpicks again, now that he was alone. As alone as he could ever be, at any rate. The other was always there, whispering quietly into his head, urging him to rip, tear, kill, to set it free upon the world and have power beyond his wildest imaginations. No, whisper wasn't quite the right word. It wasn't an actual voice, more like a constant feeling, tugging at the back of his mind. It was in him but not a part of him, not supposed to be there, and nothing good would ever come from listening to it. He knew that as instinctively as he knew kindness was good, or ramen the best food ever. He had never told anyone about the other, not even Hokage Gigi. But people clearly knew anyway. Why else would all the adults act like he didn't exist? It used to get to him sometimes, the cold glares. The way everyone pretended he wasn't even there until he did something he could be punished for. Things had been bad back then, before he promised himself he wouldn't cry anymore, before he chose to be a ninja, before he made himself always look at things positively. Now, though, he couldn't not look at things positively, pretty much all the time. Now, he had a goal to work towards. Now, the nightmares weren't so bad. The nightmares were another thing he had never told anyone about. He knew the other caused them, every single night, and even now, though he would never admit it to anyone but himself, they still terrified him. Konoha in flames, everyone he knew, and everyone he didn't know, dying before his very eyes night after night, and the other laughing and forcing pure joy into his brain when he felt like vomiting. Because he was always the one causing it. All the death and mayhem. The soft click of the lock releasing drew the blonde from his thoughts. The door had taken longer than he had thought, only 7 minutes, 6 seconds left. Naruto silently opened the door and, making his way into the room, looked around, making sure to close the door behind him just in case. While this blocked out the light from the hallway, the moonlight from the small window, just a bit too small to have worked as an entry point, on the far side of the room was more than enough for his sharp eyes to make out the details. How the hell am I supposed to find one scroll in all of these? He only just remembered not to shout out his frustration. The whole room was filled with shelves upon shelves of scrolls, many of which were coated in dust. Okay, think Naruto. What did Mizuki-sensei say about where to find it? It's on a shelf about 16 feet back and 4 feet to the left when you go through the door. I'm a bit under 5 feet tall, so that shelf there. The blonde had always had trouble relating numbers to distance, something about it just never agreed with him. It was one of the reasons he always failed the written tests at the academy, along with the questions usually being about the boring stuff he never paid attention to. He rushed over to said shelf and started searching through the 54 scrolls it held, looking for any that matched the drawing. 7 minutes, 4 seconds left. The dust that he was stirring up from the scrolls irritated his sensitive nose. Konoha's prankster king barely caught himself in time to keep from sneezing. The sound of the reflexive sharp intake of air, however, was picked up by the ears of a certain old man who just happened to be passing by. Naruto? What are you doing here so late at night? The boy leapt 8 feet in the air in surprise, or he would have, had the ceiling not been only 10 feet high. As it was, his head rammed hard up against the stone ceiling before he fell back to the floor, landing squarely on his backside. He knew the voice right away, and turning around only confirmed it. He hadn't managed to sense the old Hokage coming at all. guess he didn't get the job for nothing. OWW. Gigi, don't sneak up on me like that. As for why I'm here, well, you see, Oreo no jutsu. Or maybe he did get the job for nothing, the blonde thought as he undid his henge, the old man now soundly unconscious. He went back to sorting through scrolls, a bit more quickly now as he was starting to run out of time. Only 5 minutes, 42 seconds left, and he needed at least 3 minutes to get out of the building. There, that was the forbidden scroll, an exact match to the drawing. Strapping the huge roll of paper to his back, Naruto turned around and swiftly made his way out of the building. There was only the one guard in this section, and he wasn't nearby, so Naruto sprinted straight for the window he had used to get in, not taking too much care to soften his footfalls. He needed to be far away by the time Gigi woke up. Oh! Naruto let his body fall backwards onto the grass, exhausted but happy. He had learned his one jutsu and now just needed to wait for Mizuki-sensei to come test him on it. 2 minutes later, after which the blonde's body had recovered somewhat, another person entered the small clearing. Someone not Mizuki-sensei. "Ha, I found you, Iruka-sensei." "You idiot," shouted the scar-faced Chunin, "I found you." The blonde sheepishly scratched the back of his neck. "Hee hee, I guess you did. Anyway, I managed to learn one jutsu from this scroll, so now I just have to show it to you and I can graduate, right?" "Right, Iruka-sensei?" This statement was more than enough to confirm the academy instructor's suspicions. The boy was being used. "Graduate? Naruto, who told you that?" "Mizuki-sensei did. He told me about this scroll and how I could still graduate if I just learned a jutsu from it. Then he told me where to find it and even gave me a map complete with guard routes." See? The short blonde was clearly overjoyed with his success, and Iruka was not in the least looking forward to what he would have to explain to the boy he had grown so attached to. Fortunately, he was saved having to do this. Unfortunately, the thing that saved him was 10 kunais flying straight towards the two of them. Naruto, his body still recovering from the intense training he had just gone through, saw the kunais coming but was unable to react in time. Instead, Iruka-sensei shoved him out of the way, leaving the man himself with no time to dodge the oncoming sharp metal objects. He was able to keep himself from any bad injuries, though. After making sure his sensei wasn't badly hurt, the blonde turned to face the bastard who had just attacked them, only to find himself very confused. It was Mizuki-sensei. Mizuki-sensei had just tried to kill both of them. Good job finding the idiot. I see, so that's what's going on. Naruto, give me the scroll. Naruto. Whatever happens, don't give him the scroll. It's filled with dangerous jutsu. Mizuki used you to get his hands on it. In the back of his brain, the other was getting louder. Naruto. There's no point in you having that scroll. I'll tell you the truth. No, don't. You know about the Kyuubi attack 12 years ago, right? Mizuki. Stop this. What you don't know is that same day, a law was made. A law that only you, Naruto, are not allowed to know about. Naruto. Don't listen to him. The other was screaming now, so loud that it should have been drowning out everything, but somehow the voices of his two senseis, one terrified, loud, and panicked, the other calm, smooth, and triumphant, still reached him perfectly clearly. A law that no one is to say that you are the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Monster. Rip-tear kill. Stay away from him. Rip-tear kill. You are the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Rip-tear kill. The Kyuubi no Kitsune. Rip-tear kill. Shut up. For the briefest of moments, there was nothing. Even the the Kyuubi, was silent. But it was too brief. What's wrong? Does the little demon not want to accept what he really is? Well, I don't care. So hurry up and die, Kyuubi. He could see the giant shuriken clearly as it flew through the air towards him. Dodging out of the way wouldn't have been difficult, but did he really want to? If Uzumaki Naruto died tonight, no one would really miss him. Sure, Gigi, Iruka-sensei, Old Man Ichiraku, and Ayame Nichan would probably be sad for a little while, but they had other people in their lives. They'd move on. No one else would really care. Hell, half the village would probably celebrate. Wouldn't it be worth giving up his life to fully remove the Kyuubi from this world? He wouldn't even have to do anything, just stand there and let Mizuki's oversized shuriken cleave through his neck. It would all be over soon. Schlick. There was the unmistakable sound of metal sliding into flesh, But the sudden burst of pain the blonde had expected never came. He was still alive. It took him a moment to realize what had just happened. Iruka-sensei? Why? The scarred Chunin, his face only inches from Naruto's own, was smiling, crying, and trying to hold back his pain all at once. I understand. A bit of what you've been through. When my parents died, no one really seemed to care about me. I would act like an idiot, just to get people's attention. I was never very good in school, so it was all I could do to make people notice me. But the whole time, I was always in so much pain. It must have been so painful for you too, Naruto, right? I'm so very sorry. If I had just paid a bit more attention, maybe you wouldn't have had to hurt so much. Ha, don't lie to the damn Kyuubi brat, Iruka. You hate him just as much as I do. He's the one that killed your parents in the first place. The young demon container was horribly confused. He didn't know who to believe or what to think, so he did the only thing he could. He ran and ran, as fast and as far away as he could, until he remembered that running away had never solved anything before and slumped up against the base of a tree. For the first time he could ever remember, he was completely lost. He had no idea of how long he spent just sitting there, trying to figure things out, the Kyuubi tearing away at the back of his mind, until a voice returned him to the real world. How, Naruto? How did you know? Poof, I wasn't Iruka. Because, poof, I'm Iruka. Iruka, you sicken me. You'd even transform into the monster that killed your parents in order to protect him. I'll never let someone like you get their hands on the forbidden scroll. You idiot, Naruto's the same as me. With the secrets in that scroll, you can do anything. There's no way the Kyuubi wouldn't use that kind of power. You're right. Still behind the tree, having not moved an inch the entire time, Naruto felt like his heart had just broken. So that's it, then. Even Iruka-sensei, deep down, doesn't acknowledge me. The Kyuubi would do something like that. But Naruto's different. He's one of my students. He may not be the best, but he always tries hard, and he never gives up. People may not accept him, but he knows what it's like to be in pain, and he's still here. He's not the Kyuubi at all. He's a future ninja of Konoha. He's Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka-sensei's words were like a bowl of fresh ramen to someone about to starve to death. No way could he just give up now. Not after everything he'd gone through. Not now that Iruka-sensei had finally accepted him. Kill himself? That wouldn't solve anything. Whatever, it was Mizuki Teme talking now. Iruka, I was going to get rid of you later, but now I've changed my mind. Just die. The young ninja in training didn't even think about it. He launched himself around the tree and, seeing the pale-haired bastard running at his sensei with his second giant shuriken ready for the kill, leapt directly in his path. It was so sudden that the traitorous jerk didn't even have time to react until after Naruto's foot had firmly implanted itself in his gut, sending them both flying in different directions. Why you little? Don't you dare lay a finger on Iruka-sensei. Or I'll kill you. He could feel himself overflowing with rage. The Kyuubi was laughing, but there was no way he was going to give in to that bastard Kitsune, even if he did end up killing Mizuki Teme. He was Uzumaki Naruto, damn it. And there was no way he was going to lose to some oversized furball. Ha, a stupid failure like you? I'll kill you in one hit. Just try it, you worthless piece of trash. I'll deal back any pain you give me 1,000 times over. Then do it, Kyuubi. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. There was a huge burst of smoke, and suddenly over 1,000 grinning Narutos littered the area. Mizuki Teme was too terrified to even speak. What's wrong? All the clones said at once, weren't you going to kill me in one hit? No? Well then, I'll go first. Nearly 15 minutes later, the boy's white-haired former instructor was little more than a bleeding, twitching lump of bruises on the ground. Daylight was beginning to creep into the sky. Hee, I guess I went a little too far. He gave Iruka-sensei a sheepish grin. Naruto, come over here a minute. The scar-faced Chunin was still sitting propped up against the tree. That wound in his back must have really been hurting him. I wanted to say thank you, Naruto, for saving my life. He was slowly making his way to his feet as he spoke, and tell you how proud I am of you for being who you are. What do you mean, Iruka-sensei? I should be the one thanking you. After Mizuki Teme told me about the fox, I was about ready to just let myself die. You saved me by believing in me back there. I'd do anything to keep that belief. The man smiled. Okay, I've decided. Close your eyes, I'm going to give you a present. Naruto could hear what sounded like Iruka-sensei fiddling with some kind of cloth. After a moment, the sound stopped. Can I open my eyes now? Go ahead. The blonde opened his eyes to see Iruka-sensei's smiling face, his own goggles held in the man's hand. Wait, if he had the goggles, then what was that on his forehead? And where was Iruka-sensei's? Hardly daring to believe it could be true, Naruto slowly moved his hand up to the object tied around his forehead, his fingers tracing the cool metal and the symbol of Konoha etched into it. This was what it felt like to really be happy, completely happy. He found himself smiling, not the usual ear-to-ear grin, or the smirk he had whenever he got a good idea for a prank, but a real, warm, open smile of true joy. Congratulations, you graduate. Let's celebrate. I'll take you to eat Shiraku ramen. Iruka-sensei. Naruto shouted, preparing to throw himself at the man and hug him and never ever let him go. That was when it happened. He heard it, the distinctive, unmistakable whistling sound of a kunai cutting through the air. He turned towards it. Too close. Too fast. No time to dodge. Then, again, Iruka-sensei was there, somehow, taking the sharp blade right in his shoulder. Mizuki had regained consciousness just long enough to throw that one deadly knife before passing out again. Iruka-sensei stumbled. He would have toppled over had Naruto not been there. The young ninja caught him and gently laid him down on the grass. Iruka-sensei, what's wrong? Will you be okay? Should I take you to the hospital? No cough, no time. Poison. Fast acting. Cough cough Naruto. I'll always believe in you. Cough become Hokage. You can. Iruka-sensei? Iruka-sensei? No, please, don't leave me. Not now that I'm just getting to know you. Iruka-sensei. Hey, look at that. The Kyuubi brat crying over the body of his dead teacher. How sweet. Naruto spun to face the voice, Mizuki's voice. He could feel the tears streaming from his eyes, down his cheeks, across the whisker-like birthmarks that identified him to the world as the container of the Kyuubi. I'm going to kill you. It was strange. He should have been burning with anger and rage like he was before, but he wasn't. His mind had gone through too much in too short a time, and all he could feel was his grief, a strange calmness, and an absolute certainty that he was going to kill the monster in front of him. Naruto just stood there, glaring at the man relentlessly with blue eyes colder and harder than ice. Even as Mizuki got to his feet and started searching through his pouch for something, the boy didn't move. He did nothing as the man found what he was looking for, a vial full of a strange red substance, and drank it. As his muscles expanded to enormous sizes, tearing his clothes apart, Naruto simply kept his piercing blue eyes trained on Mizuki's. As his body changed even further, and he became some sort of tiger man, and he laughed and started shouting about how he would crush everything in his way with the power given to him by Orochimaru-sama. The blonde kept up his calm, cold stare. Then the Tiger Man charged. Naruto summoned up all his chakra. He could still remember, perfectly clearly, one day in their second year when Iruka-sensei had mentioned to the class about chakra overload. Just like there is chakra exhaustion, there is also chakra overload. If a ninja has more chakra flowing around inside his or her body than it can handle, then the body will start to tear itself apart from the inside as all that chakra tries to escape. Unlike chakra exhaustion, chakra overload is extremely rare, as it requires massive amounts of chakra on a level most cages never even have. So far, in the history of the ninja world, there have only been 2 recorded cases of chakra overload. The first was in. Naruto had no doubts that chakra overload was what he was now experiencing. It felt like his entire body was slowly burning up from the inside out. Hell, he was actually glowing with a soft blue-white light from every part of his body. At the same time, though, he felt powerful, like he could pick up the Hokage Tower and move it to a new location if he wanted to. The beast man he had once called Sensei seemed to be moving in slow motion, like he was underwater. Naruto ran across the 2 yards remaining between them and punched him directly in the center of the chest, holding nothing back. He felt more than saw as Mizuki's entire body just crumpled? Exploded? Fell apart? It was hard to tell, around the spot he had made contact. Sure that the man was now dead, he had felt his heart explode. He let the chakra go and slipped into unconsciousness. White everywhere. That meant either the hospital or heaven. Everything was still too muddled to get any more clues as to where he was. Wait, he could still sense the Kyuubi pawing away at his mind. Damn, the hospital, then. Naruto hated the hospital. You're awake, Gigi? Talking hurt. So did turning his head to see that yes, it was the Hokage who was in the room with him. Try not to move, Naruto. Your body is still recovering. You should consider yourself lucky. Anyone else would probably be dead after pulling off what you did back in the forest. Details started to filter in. Mostly it was the pain, the severe ache throughout his entire body. And not the good kind of ache like you would have after a long day of hard physical training, but the other kind of ache, where everything is just that constant, slight pain that you can't ignore and that won't go away. The next important detail he registered was that he was still wearing the forehead protector. His forehead protector. Iruka-sensei's forehead protector. He could feel the cool metal through the cloth on his forehead. It felt nice. You should know, I saw everything that happened from when Iruka found you on. I'm sorry. I wouldn't have been able to get there in time to be of any use. Your crystal ball? Gigi had shown him the object once when he was younger, explaining how he could use it to see anywhere within the village walls. The old man nodded. Then I'm still a ninja? He started to gesture to the headband, but stopped when attempting to move his arm made the pain 100 times worse. Yes, you're still a ninja, Naruto. In fact, I dare say you have more right to wear that headband than a great many of the people who call themselves ninjas. Are really? Honest praise like that from Gigi was something very rarely given out. The aged Hokage's soft smile was answer enough. Then his expression turned serious. Now, I'm assuming you have some questions for me. The blonde demon container knew exactly what he was talking about. Yeah, the Kyuubi. So what's the deal, Gigi? Am I, like, the fox? No. That man did not understand what he was talking about, Naruto. The night the Kyuubi attacked, the only way of stopping it was to seal it away, and the only thing strong enough to contain a demon with that level of power was a newborn baby. The Kyuubi is inside you, but it is not you. The boy took a moment to absorb the information. It was just confirmation of what he had already thought, but it was good to have. And the law? What about that? After seeing the way the village reacted to what had happened, I realized that no one who knew the truth about the fox was going to be able to treat you like a normal person. So I made that law, that no one is allowed to talk about it, to keep the other children your age from finding out. I wanted to give you a chance with the rest of your generation. Naruto spent a good bit longer thinking about this answer. And it was while he was thinking that he realized just what Hokage Gigi was trying to do. He was trying to keep the blonde's mind off of what had happened to Iruka-sensei for as long as he could. Because even something as terrible as the legendary Kyuubi no Kitsune was nowhere near as painful as the emptiness he felt thinking of the scarred Chunin instructor. Along with the shift in his thoughts, his face shifted as well, ever so slightly, into a look of deep sadness. His normally bright blue eyes seemed to dim. When is the funeral? The old man looked sad as well, now. Tomorrow, at 1. Thank you. They both stayed silent for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. I can feel it, Gigi. My whole life, as long as I can remember, there's been this constant feeling in the back of my head, this wrongness, inside my mind, telling me to hurt, and kill, and… When I was younger, I would sometimes use it to decide what to do. I'd listen to what it told me and do the exact opposite. Because, even though it's inside my head, I can just tell that it's not supposed to be there, it's not right. I never told you, or anyone, about it, because I was scared of how you'd react. Now, though, I finally have a name for it, at least. More silence. Gigi, why didn't you ever tell me? The Hokage sighed. I wanted to be sure you would be able to handle knowing. Information is one of the most powerful and dangerous things in the world. Had I told you before you were ready to know, you might have reacted badly, maybe even killed yourself, or… That made sense. After all, that had been his immediate reaction on finding out. Can I have some time to rest? Certainly, Naruto. When the old Hokage left, the boy closed his eyes, but he didn't sleep. Sleeping would mean nightmares, and what he needed right now was just time to think. Sarutobi Hiruzen returned to his office after a very enlightening conversation with his favorite new genin. He wasn't supposed to be biased, of course, but he just couldn't help it. That boy had the best qualities of both his parents along with something else, entirely unique to himself. The Sandaime couldn't quite identify just what it was. But it was blindingly clear that Naruto would grow up to be a ninja like no other, provided he was able to survive the experience. The blonde was dealing with everything that had happened surprisingly well, it seemed. After the way he had been immediately after losing Iruka, Hiruzen had feared the boy's mind had finally broken under the pressure of so much happening all at once. Fortunately, that was not the case. Though the blonde not asking for ramen could be taken as a disturbing sign. The news that Naruto could, and in fact had always been able to, sense the Kyuubi's presence within himself had come as something of a shock. He was rather unclear about just how strong the connection between boy and demon was, though. He would need to ask more about it later. Also, there was the matter of just what had happened when the blonde had killed Mizuki. Not the man's sudden transformation, no. That had had all the hallmarks of one of his former students' sick experiments, and the ex-taijutsu instructor had even admitted that Orochimaru had been the source. What didn't quite make sense was what had happened with Naruto. Even with the chakra overload the blonde had clearly been experiencing, his physical strength could not have realistically been boosted that far. It was nearly on par with what Tsunade was capable of. If only she herself were to examine the boy. The doctors who had looked at him could find nothing out of the ordinary besides the expected. Denser than normal bones and muscles, the extraordinary healing rate, and the multiple impossibilities about his metabolism. And of course the ridiculous amount of chakra he had and the unprecedented method his body had developed to handle it. But none of the medics currently in Konoha were anywhere near her level. There could have been something they just were not able to detect. Sitting down at his desk, the aged Hokage looked at all the paperwork that had piled up and sighed. That really wasn't his priority at the moment. With Iruka gone, he did not expect the remaining members of the senior academy staff to make good decisions about team placement, especially considering how the new batch of genin contained not just one, but two students who had always incited large amounts of bias. It would be up to him to decide the arrangements himself, then. It was about 5 hours later when Hokage Jiji came back. Naruto had had enough time to sort things out in his mind, and the pain was mostly gone. He was sitting up now, his legs dangling over the side of the bed. "Hey, Jiji, when can I get out of here?" "Wait, scratch that. How long have I even been here?" The old man grinned. "You were brought in about 14 hours ago. The doctors said you can leave whenever you feel ready, but they strongly recommend that you not engage in any strenuous physical activity for at least the next 24 hours, to be sure you are fully recovered." Stupid doctors and their stupid big words, Naruto grumbled while going over what the Hokage had said in his mind, a bit more slowly. "So basically, I shouldn't train till tomorrow evening, right?" The grin turned into a smile. "That's right. Well, why didn't ya just say that, then?" Stupid Jiji. He muttered to himself for a few seconds about mean old men making things more complicated before coming up with an idea. "Oh, I know. I'll go to eat Shiraku ramen. Wanna join me, Jiji?" He chuckled. "I would love to, Naruto, but I have lots of paperwork waiting to be finished back at the tower." The most powerful ninja in the village was being stopped by some pieces of paper? Now that was just plain crazy. Well, why don't you make someone else do the paperwork for you? Or invent a paperwork no jutsu, or, I got it, use a shadow clone. That way, you can do the paperwork and take me out to ramen at the same time. A second later, the Hokage fainted, a look of triumph on his face. "Hey, Jiji. Jiji? Doctor. Naruto had never really thought about the one set of black formal wear he had mixed in with all the orange, white, blue, and red that filled the rest of his closet. Not until now. Now, standing with many others all dressed the same way. The forehead protector, his? Iruka-sensei's? He wasn't sure, was tied around his neck. His classmates and himself made up the first 2 rows. He stood closest to the coffin. None of them questioned it. They may not have liked him very much, but they couldn't deny that it was the blonde boy their teacher had the closest relationship with. Right next to him was a space where Jiji had been standing a moment before. He was wearing black, too. It was the first time Naruto had seen him not in his Hokage robes and hat. Behind them were rows upon rows of other people. People he had seen occasionally at the academy. People he might have glimpsed once or twice around Konoha. People he had never laid eyes on. All of them had known Iruka-sensei. He had counted 487 people who had all known him in some way. For once in his life, Naruto almost wished they were glaring at him. At any other time, most of them would. Because even those cold glares were better than the sadness he had seen in their eyes. Even now, with them standing behind him, he could feel it. The grief, the loss. We are gathered here today to mourn the death of Amino Iruka. We all knew him in some way, be it as friends, co-workers, or students. As such, it is only fair that you all know how he died. He gave his own life to save a fellow Konoha ninja. 2 nights ago, Toki Mizuki betrayed the village and attempted to run away with a scroll filled with forbidden jutsu. Iruka and another ninja met him near Training Ground 36 and killed him, but not before Iruka took a poisoned kunai meant for his partner. Iruka was an amazing man and a true Konoha ninja, but I am sure that what he would most want to be remembered for is the gift he has given to all his students. He poured his heart and soul into his teaching. As such, it would be most appropriate for those same students he always cared so deeply for to be the ones to speak about him. Any of you who wish to say something about Iruka, please come up here and do so. As the Hokage walked back down to stand next to Naruto, one of the girls, Kasumi, was the first to step forward. She talked, sometimes only just barely holding back her tears, about how he had always been there whenever she had trouble with a jutsu or concept, or even just to talk to. More followed after her, all talking about Iruka-sensei and the ways he had influenced their lives. Even Shikamaru, Shino, and Sasuke went up and said something. During the middle of all this, Naruto spoke quietly, never moving or turning his head. Gigi, why do people give their lives for others? The old man seemed to think about this for a moment before answering just as quietly. When someone dies, he disappears, along with his past, his current lifestyle, and his future. Many people die before they should. They die easily and unexpectedly, in surprisingly simple ways. The people who die have goals and dreams. But they each have something else just as important. Family, friends, lovers. People who are important to you. You trust and help each other. The bond between you and those important to you grows thicker and stronger as time goes by. It is beyond reason. Those bound to you by that bond will gladly give their lives for those they care about. Because it is important to them. Yeah, I think I get that, a bit. But it's painful when someone dies. I know, Naruto, I know. You just have to remember what it is Iruka gave his life for. I think I get that too. Thanks, Gigi. Finally, everyone else had gone, leaving Naruto with no way to put it off any longer. Slowly, he made his way up the stand. He looked out at the 486 other people, all looking right back at him. Everyone there had the same expression on his or her face, himself included. He took a deep breath before letting the words flow. I've had a lot of time to think about what to say, and I've come to a decision. I'm gonna start off with a confession. Iruka-sensei died because of me. There were sharp intakes of breath and looks of confusion, most coming from his classmates. The adults, for the most part, must have already been able to put the pieces together. After a moment, everyone quieted down. I was the other ninja Gigi mentioned, the one he gave his life to protect. This is his forehead protector around my neck, that he gave to me just minutes before. I'm not gonna go into details though, cause how he died isn't really important. What's important, what would be important to Iruka-sensei, was how he lived, and what he left us. You all knew him. What do you think he'd say if he saw us all like this, standing around and moping? Cause the Iruka-sensei I knew would have made us all run laps for being so gloomy. People chuckled, and he saw some nods of agreement. He'd want us to remember him by remembering the things he taught us, not just about how to be a ninja, but about how to be a person. And he taught us a lot, even when we ignored him or slept through his lectures, Shikamaru. Hey, most of that stuff was really boring. And don't you pretend you didn't sleep in class sometimes, too. Troublesome blondes. What was that, Shika? Ino felt the need to add in. Naruto decided he needed to settle everyone down before they all broke out into a babble of conversations. Oi, I'm still talking here. Amazingly, they listened. I think the most important thing he gave us all, though, was his will to get what he wanted. He lost his parents in the Kyuubi attack, when he was no older than I am now. After that, he was all alone. Everyone was so caught up in their own loss, their own pain, or in keeping the village as a whole going that there was no time to spare for one poor orphan boy. But he didn't give up. Even when it was so painful he didn't know what to do with himself, he kept going. And in the end, he finally got to do something he truly loved. No one who's ever seen Sensei at the front of a classroom can deny that he loved teaching. Whatever he was doing, whether it was giving one of his lectures that seemed to go on forever, or teaching how to throw kunai and shuriken, or even shouting at us with his big head no jutsu, he always had that look in his eyes, that look that said, "Here I am, and I'd rather be here than anywhere else in the whole world." And he loved us, too, each and every one of us. So, to remember and honor him, we should all find that thing that makes us happy and do it. Not just do it, though, but do it the best we possibly can, with everything we are. Whether it's being a ninja, or a ramen chef, or a business owner, or a teacher, or a Hokage. We all need to find that thing and do it with all our hearts. For Iruka-sensei, as he stepped down and went back to his place in the crowd, Naruto heard a noise. It took him a moment to figure out just what the noise was, until he realized people were clapping. All 486 people were clapping for him, and for Iruka-sensei. It was something that had never happened to him before, outside of his imagination. And as Hokage Jiji went up to cremate the body with a Gwokugyu no Jutsu, Naruto, for the first time in his 12 years, felt content. Well, Naruto thought, as he sat in his classroom at the academy for what would likely be the last time, Jiji's grandson sure is an interesting brat. Konohamaru, I'll remember your name. It had felt odd, teaching someone like that. Of course, all he had wanted to learn was the Oryo no Jutsu, but still. It was strange, being in this room without Iruka-sensei, like looking at the sky and seeing the sun missing, or eating ramen only to find out the noodles weren't there. Instead, it was just Jiji standing there, giving a clearly pre-written speech about the responsibilities and dangers of being a ninja. The words just had that dull, lifeless feel to them, like they had been said so many times by so many people in this same situation over the years that they were just tired and wanted to rest. He tried to picture how Iruka-sensei would do it if he were there, but even his mental recreation of the scarred Chunin couldn't manage to make the speech any more interesting. The blonde had found himself thinking deeply a lot more often the past few days. Probably because there was just so much for him to think about now. He'd see something completely ordinary, like a man buying some pig meat from the butcher just down the street from his apartment building, and he'd wonder. What did the man want the meat for? Was it for feeding his family? Or to be given to some animals? Or maybe he was just buying it because he could. Looking closer at the man's face, though, was enough to give him the answer he wanted. The man had that bright, happy look, the king you only get when doing something for someone you love. It didn't even lessen when he spotted Naruto staring at him. Dinner for his family then. Something else had changed over the past several days as well. Now, when Naruto walked down a street, one out of every few hundred people would smile instead of glaring. And the blonde would smile right back, that soft smile he first felt himself use when Iruka-sensei gave him his forehead protector, not the extra wide grin he normally showed the world. He recognized every single one of these smilers, though. They were the people who had been at the funeral. And while his dream of being accepted by the people of Konoha was still a long way off, those smiles in the street erased any lingering doubts about it being impossible. And this morning, he had noticed one more change. His classmates. Whenever one of them would look at him, or speak to him, they didn't think of him as an attention-grabbing idiot failure. No, now they thought of him as an attention-grabbing idiot who was able to give a good speech. Well, at least it was an improvement. Well, not quite all of his peers had changed their views. Sasuke Teme still saw him as worthwhile. Ow, right, important fact. Jiji can throw chalk really hard. Naruto, please pay attention. I am going to announce your teams. Oh, right, sorry, Jiji, I'm listening. Very well. Team 1 will be. Make that half listening, anyway. Kinda just partly paying attention so as to know who was with who and who he was with. The blonde would have been fine with just about anyone in his class, except for Sasuke Teme. Stupid bastard. Everyone loved him and thought he was so cool just because he had lost his family, and they had all been awesome ninjas, apparently. So everyone thought he would end up being an awesome ninja too, and bah. The thing that really pissed Naruto off, though, was the Uchiha's attitude, like he was above everyone else. He really wasn't that great, and the blonde promised himself that he'd prove it to him one day. Team 7 will be Uzumaki Naruto. As Gigi paused, the blonde boy suddenly found himself on the edge of his seat in suspense. The next two names out of the old man's mouth would be the people he had the best opportunity to become good friends with. It was really a moment that would affect the whole rest of his life in ways he couldn't even imagine. And the old man sure was pausing a long time. Yamanaka Ino. Ino? Why couldn't it be Sakura-chan? Well, not that he was complaining or anything, but Sakura-chan was just so pretty, while Ino was just a Sasuke freak. Well, as long as the bastard wasn't the third team member, things would turn out okay. And again Gigi was pausing a really long time between names. He hadn't done this for any of the first 6 teams. It was like the old man was doing it just to annoy him. Wait a sec, he had that mischievous little glint in his eye, stupid old man. I don't care if my pranking days are over, I'll get you for this somehow, Gigi. And Inuzuka Kiba, Ino and Kiba? Yeah, he could get along with them all right, and they were both pretty good ninjas, so there was no need to worry about anyone falling behind and dragging the team down or anything like that. Or quitting. They were some of the only ones in the class that Naruto could tell really wanted to be ninja. Oh, the old man had just announced Team 8 to be Hinata, Shikamaru, and Choji. And it looked like there wouldn't be a Team 9, something about last year's Team 9 still being there. Only 3 students were left now, so it seemed kind of silly to say who Team 10 was, but Gigi did it anyway. Shino, Sakura-chan, and the bastard. And that concludes this year's Genin team divisions. Your Jonin instructors will be arriving to pick you up after lunch. I recommend you use this period to become better acquainted with your comrades. Yup, Gigi was definitely annoying him on purpose, and he was definitely getting pranked for it later. Naruto had promised not to pull any more pranks, but Konohamaru hadn't. Now he'd just have to find the brat and teach him the wonderful art of the prank. Oi, Naruto. Only 2 people in the class had a voice that loud, and the blonde boy was one of them. Yeah, Kiba? He shouted back across the room. Come on over here already. Hokage-sama said we should get to know each other better. Oh, so that was what all those big words Gigi had used meant. Okay, coming right over. Naruto decided to take the fastest route, namely the air. That way, he could get there quickly, wouldn't have to bother with pushing his way through the crowd, and it would look cool. Of course, he didn't stop to think about how, when jumping across a crowded room, one can't be sure the spot they plan on landing in is empty. This turned out to be the case when the blonde-haired blue-eyed boy crashed straight into the class's only blonde-haired blue-eyed girl. Naturally, the sound of the 2 hitting drew the attention of all 35 other people in the room, 25 genin, 1 Hokage, and 9 hidden Jonin senseis. And 1 dog. The scene they saw caused one young Hyuga girl to turn beet red, let out a quiet eep, and faint. Somehow, Naruto had managed to land directly on top of a startled Ino, their lips pressed together in a completely involuntary kiss. Also, both of them had had their mouths open slightly. For several seconds, it was like the world had frozen. Then, met oath. The sound had come from the girl on the floor. The boy on top of her took 2 more additional seconds to process that she was, in fact, trying to speak, and that it would be completely impossible for her to do so with his tongue in her mouth and vice versa. On realizing this, he swiftly pulled his face off of hers. Huh? The boy's brain wasn't quite functioning properly at the moment, or he would have been able to properly interpret the look of pure rage on the girl's face. I said, get off. The words didn't quite have the force she had hoped for. Something to do with not enough air getting into her lungs because of the heavy weight on top of them. Oh, sorry. Only now was Naruto beginning to understand what had just happened. Naruto, you idiot. Be a bit more careful next time you want to try and show off, would you? I was saving my first kiss for Sasuke-kun, you clumsy fool. And you seriously need to start laying off the ramen. I swear, you weigh as much as Choji. Each insult was emphasized with a fist to the top of the boy's head. What was that? Oh, nothing, Choji. But as for you, oi, I'll have you know this is all good, solid, hard-earned muscle. And what's so great about Sasuke-teme, anyway? I could pound his face in any day of the week. Don't insult Sasuke-kun like that, you. Knock it off, you too. Kiba chose that moment to intervene before his new teammates decided to kill each other. From on top of his head, Akamaru echoed his partner's sentiments with a couple of sharp barks. It was an accident. Don't go tearing each other to pieces because of it. More than anything else, it was the fact that Kiba was acting as the voice of reason that managed to calm them down. Sorry, Ino. The blonde apologized. Sorry, Naruto. The other blonde apologized. As it always did when he was embarrassed, the short boy's right hand went up to scratch at the back of his neck. So, since that was mostly my fault, why don't you pick where we go for lunch? Oh. So, guys, what do you want to talk about? Naruto asked, grinning at his two teammates. The three genin of the newly formed Team 7 were sitting on the academy roof in a sort of triangle shape, each with a bento box in front of them. Well, actually, the small boy had two bento boxes in front of him, and Kiba had a can of meat for Akamaru as well. There had been a silent agreement between the three to leave ninja-related things out of the conversation. This time was for learning about each other on a more personal level. Well, said the dog boy, let's start with asking why you brought so much food. What, I can't have a big lunch. It's not like I couldn't afford it. Now that we're ninjas, I'm sure we'll be making lots of money. He had brought a lot of food, though: 2 rice balls, 2 turkey ham tomato and cheese sandwiches, 2 oranges, and 2 cartons of milk. And since we're talking about lunches, Ino, what the hell is that supposed to be? Immediately after asking this, he bit off nearly a quarter of his first sandwich. From her bento box, the girl had taken a cube of tofu and a leaf of lettuce, leaving the box empty. My lunch, of course. In case you didn't notice earlier, I'm a girl. I need to stick to my diet if I want to keep my figure and impress Sasuke-kun. The two boys of Team 7 looked at each other and rolled their eyes simultaneously. Then another quarter of Naruto's sandwich vanished. Kiba tore into a chicken leg, and took off a corner of her tofu cube. Hey Naruto, I've always meant to ask. This was Kiba again, having just swallowed his first hunk of meat. Do you have a pet fox or something? 'Cause you've always got this fox scent around you. The Kyuubi container froze momentarily. Fortunately, neither of the others noticed, because he immediately started to choke on the large clump of rice he had just put in his mouth. The short time spent not able to breathe was enough to calm his briefly panicking mind. What do you mean, fox scent? And what are you sniffing me for anyway? The boy accused. I mean exactly what I said. Inuzuka clan members have a heightened sense of smell, I can't help it. And Akamaru can tell too. You smell like a fox who went for a bath in a bowl of miso ramen. The small white dog stopped tearing at his own meat long enough to yip his agreement. He wasn't quite sure how to respond to that last bit, so he chose to just ignore it. Anyway, I don't have any pets, unless you count Uki-kun, but he's a plant. I think there's a family of foxes living near one of my favorite training spots, though. Would that explain it? Kiba nodded. Team 7's Kunoichi decided to make herself heard. Plant? You like gardening, Naruto? Unfortunately, she had caught him with a slice of orange in his mouth. Ma, Ioni mthth on though. Huh? This came from both of the other two. He took a moment to finish chewing. Yeah, I've only got the one, though. Not enough room in my apartment for any more. Do you like to garden, Ino? Yep, my parents own a flower store, so I've been around plants my whole life. Oh yeah, Yamanaka Flowers, of course. I remember that place now. There was this one time, about a year ago, when Konoha's prankster king trailed off, concluding that that particular story would be best told in other company. Yes? The other blonde asked, the slightest hint of a threat behind the inquiry? Never mind. New topic. He swiftly turned to the other boy. So, Kiba, your family is, like, a family of dog ninjas or something? Oh no, you're not getting off that easy. That slight hint of threat had become much more obvious. When you what, Naruto? He looked to his fellow male for help, but both Kiba and his partner were busy eating. When I snuck in and poured orange dye in the washing machine while it was running. Please don't kill me. As soon as Ino figured out what the other blonde had just said, she threw herself at him, intent on giving him a beating for ruining her clothes. Naruto immediately leapt to his feet, and she started to chase him in circles around Kiba. The boy and his dog looked at each other and sighed. Then the Inuzuka decided to take advantage of the opportunity by stealing Naruto's remaining rice ball. He brought it to his mouth. Yoink! The blue-eyed boy stole his food back, stuffing it straight into his own gaping hole. However, he had come a bit too close to Kiba, and his leg got tangled up in the other's jacket, resulting in him spinning around to face the other direction. Ino, of course, was not expecting this sudden turn around and stop and slammed straight into him. The end result was much like what had happened back in the classroom, except that Ino was now on top, and the rice ball was filling both their mouths. 30 seconds later, both had agreed to pretend it had never happened. Anyway, you both probably know I'm an orphan. Been living on my own since, can't quite remember. Hokage Gigi was really the only person in my life when I was younger, besides the Ichirakus, so it really isn't surprising that I want to be just like him. Well, except for the smoking. And the old age. But what about you two? What are your families like? Naruto asked, before chugging one of his milk cartons. Ino went first. It's just me, my mom, and my dad. Dad's a jonin, but he's not gone as much as you'd expect, because he helps out pretty often in the interrogation department. Mom just stays home and runs the store. Dad and I help when we can, but it's Mom who does most of the work. She has basic ninja training, of course, but apparently it just wasn't the life she wanted for herself. Dad was the one who made me want to be a ninja, though. When I was little, he'd tell me stories about some of his missions. It all just sounded so exciting. Saving people, stopping bandits, everything. Not too long after I started the academy, I met Forehead Girl, and we were best friends for a while, till we started fighting over Sasuke-kun. And that's my life in a nutshell. My turn, I guess, Kiba said. I've got my mom, my sister, and all the dogs. Dad used to be around, too, but Mom, well, she can be kinda forceful sometimes, and apparently it was a bit too much for him. I think I was about 5 then, so I don't remember too well. Mom's a jonin, and she's actually the best tracker in the village, so she and Kuromaru go out with the hunter nins pretty often to help them catch missing nins. Hana's 18 and a chunin. She mostly stays in the village though, cause she's the only veterinarian in Konoha. As for me becoming a ninja, there was never really anything else. The whole clan has been ninjas all the way back to the time of the Shodai. But I get the feeling that ninja life is something I can enjoy, don't you think so too, Akamaru? Arf. By this time, all 4 had finished their lunches and begun cleaning up. Well, this was Ino. I say the first thing we do after meeting out Jonin Sensei is go shopping. The other 2 looked at her like she was crazy. I mean it, you too. You boys have no fashion sense. I absolutely refuse to be on a team with someone wearing that. She pointed to Naruto. Predictably, the boy took offense to this. Oi, what the hell's wrong with my jacket? It's orange. The look she gave him said, quite clearly, just how stupid are you? He just as clearly missed said look. So? Orange is awesome. Way better than that stupid purple thing you're wearing. Guys? Kiba tried to interject. Now Ino was furious. No one insults her clothes. She took a threatening step forward. I will not allow that monstrosity of a piece of clothing on my team. And the pants will have to go, too. Guys? He was ignored again. Your team? Your team? This is definitely not your team. It's our team, or our sensei's team. That comment had really pissed Naruto off, if the small wisps of chakra leaking off him were anything to go by. Their faces were now only inches apart. Guys, the third teammate shouted. They both rounded on him. What? It's time to go, he reminded them. Oh, both said. Sorry, Naruto. About the clothing and the team comment. I didn't mean it. I just get a bit riled up when people insult my clothes. I'm sorry too, Ino. I'll try to keep that in mind about you and clothing. Team 7 turned and headed back inside, Kiba in front, Naruto in back. But that purple thing really is stupid looking. She immediately rounded on her fellow blonde, only to find him smiling at her. Hee hee. Just kidding. Ino smiled in return. Oh. Sitting in between his 2 new teammates, Naruto couldn't help but think that finally, after 12 years of suffering, his life was starting to look up. He liked Ino and Kiba. Well, most of the time, anyway. The blue-eyed girl seemed able to get on his nerves in a way even Sasuke Teme had never managed, and her obsession with the pretty boy Uchiha was really annoying. Kiba, though, he didn't see himself having any problems getting along with, because they were just so similar personality-wise. He turned to face the door, along with all the other new genin, except Shikamaru, who had somehow managed to fall asleep in the 2 minutes since he had sat down, when 8 men and women, all clearly Jonin, walked into the room and stood at the front of the class in a line, facing them. One by one, they called their teams to them and left the room. Naruto looked ahead to the 7th person in the lineup. He was a tall, dark-skinned man with a thick beard smoking a cigarette. The boy could smell the vile thing from this far away, and it was all he could do not to gag. Next to him, Kiba and Akamaru seemed to be in the same state, if not worse. Team 7, come with me. Damn, they did have the smoking man. Oh well, hopefully his teaching would make up for his stench. Asuma led his new genin team to a training ground about 10 miles from the academy. He made sure to keep his pace at something the fresh ninjas would be able to follow. When they arrived at the main clearing of Training Ground 3, Kakashi would probably kill him when the man found out he had stolen it. He saw that the results of his impromptu test were exactly as he had expected. Uzumaki was perfectly fresh, as though he had just been on a brisk jog. The Inuzuka was breathing heavily but trying to hide it, and the team's kunoichi would probably need a moment or two to recover. He had watched the 3 of them interacting on the academy roof during lunch earlier that day and found himself pleasantly surprised. For a fresh genin team, they got along with one another pretty well. But more on that later. Now it was time for what was known as introduction time. Right, now that we're all comfortably settled, I think it's time we got to know each other. My name is Sarutobi Asuma. I enjoy playing strategy games like Shogi and Go, along with smoking my cigarettes. My favorite color is brown. I don't like parents who try and control their kids' lives, and I have absolutely zero tolerance for anyone who would threaten Konoha and Fire Country. My dream for the future is to one day settle down and retire, maybe have a kid or 2 of my own. Sarutobi, are you related to Gigi and Konohamaru, then? The blonde boy blurted out as soon as he finished. Figures the kid would pick up on that bit. That's right, Naruto. Hokage-sama is my father, and Konohamaru is my nephew. Now, I was going to let you go next, but after that outburst I've changed my mind. Kiba, you go. I'm Inuzuka Kiba, and this here is Akamaru. The boy's partner added in his own bark of introduction. I like spending time with Akamaru, especially going for runs through the woods with just the 2 of us. I also enjoy being with my family, except for when Hana starts teasing me about stuff. My favorite color is gray, like my coat. I dislike arrogant bastards like Uchiha Sasuke who think they're better than everyone else just because. And my dream for the future is to show the world that I'm gonna be a great ninja and a proud member of the Inuzuka clan. When the dog boy had mentioned the last Uchiha, Asuma had found himself needing to send a harsh glare at the team kunoichi to keep her from interjecting. So far, though, everything was going pretty much as expected. He gestured for the girl to speak next. Hi, my name's Yamanaka Ino. I like Sasuke-kun, flowers, gardening, helping out in my family's flower shop, and Sasuke-kun. My favorite color is purple. I don't like anyone who insults Sasuke-kun or my clothes, and my dream for the future is to marry Sasuke-kun. Energetic, but a bit of a one-track mind. Well, it was good to know what needed to be worked on. Only one left now, and if half the stories his dad had told him were true, the Jonin would probably find himself wanting new eardrums before the Foxboy finished. Finally, Naruto leapt to his feet. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, Konoha, and training. I really like the ramen they serve at Ichiraku Ramen, Hokage Gigi, Old Man Ichiraku, Ayame Nichan, and playing pranks. Gigi made me promise to stop the pranks now that I'm a ninja, though. His face fell briefly before springing back into a huge grin just as fast. My favorite color is orange. I don't like the 3 minutes I have to wait for the water to heat up when making instant ramen. I'm starting to really dislike the smell of cigarettes. And I really don't like stupid Sasuke Teme. He's such a stuck-up bastard, like Kiba said, and he's always just off brooding by himself, so obsessed with what he lost that he doesn't realize what he had, or what he has now. I hate traitors. Anyone willing to betray the people who love and care about them isn't worth the spit from my mouth. My dream for the future is to make Iruka-sensei proud of me and become the greatest Hokage ever. And to try every flavor of ramen. That last bit had been tacked on almost as an afterthought. While Asuma did indeed find his eardrums ringing, he was also quite surprised. Apparently, the death of that academy instructor had affected the boy greatly, more so than he normally let the world see. Uzumaki Naruto. A psychologist would have a field day with that kid. Anyway, now he had 3 cute potential genin and 1 dog all staring up at him, wanting to know what they were doing next. Very good, you 3. I think we'll all get along just fine. But before we do anything else, there's something you should know. 4 inquiring gazes locked onto his own. You see, you 3 aren't actually genin yet. He braced himself. What? Damn, these 3 could be loud. His dad must have heard that all the way over in the Hokage Tower. That's right. The test at the academy was just to get rid of the ones who never had a chance. Tomorrow, all the newly assigned teams will be given their own test. Pass, and you are officially instated as genin of Konoha. Fail, and it's right back to another year at the academy. The expressions of dread on each of their faces were priceless. If only he'd brought a camera. This test, though, is extremely difficult, with an approximate 66.6% fail rate. Huh? What do you mean, an approximate 66.6% fail rate? This was from Naruto, who now looked confused. The other 2 just looked more horrified. While he didn't love this part quite as much as Kakashi, the Jonin couldn't help but admit to himself that it was kind of fun. I mean that, out of your graduating class of 27 students, only 9 are likely to become ninjas. But the expected fearful look never showed on the blonde boy's face. The other 2, yes, but he was different. And it was at this moment that Asuma first realized just how different Uzumaki Naruto really was. No, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki wasn't frightened at all. He was determined. And excited. Well, bring it on. We're ready. Right, Ino, Kiba, Akamaru? Right, Arf. And his determination and excitement sort of flowed into the other 2, leaving the Hokage's son with 3 resolved, serious genin, and 1 dog. He laughed, resulting in 3 puzzled genin, and 1 dog. That's great that you feel that way, but the test isn't until tomorrow. Meet here at 8 o'clock sharp, and we'll discuss the details then. For now, you're dismissed. And he shunshined away. Not really, though. He had just gone into the trees and was watching to see what would happen next. Predictably, Naruto was the first to voice his opinion. Hey, why don't we all hang around for a bit and try and think up some ideas for this test, whatever it is. And we can explore the training ground, too. Get to know the terrain, like Iruka-sensei taught us. The other 2 looked surprised at that last part. Kiba was the one to speak. Naruto, weren't you asleep for that lecture? The short boy gave his teammate a strange look. Probably. But ever since sensei died, I've been remembering bits and pieces of the stuff he'd teach us, stuff I never really learned when he was alive. All 3 became a bit downcast. As seemed to be becoming a dependable occurrence, Naruto was the first to perk back up. So, what do you say? Want to check the place out? The other 2's faces morphed into apologetic looks. I'd like to, and it's a good idea, but I promised Mom I'd go straight home as soon as possible. She'd skin me alive if I disobeyed. The dog barked out his agreement. Forehead said she wanted to talk to me after team meetings. Said it was important. But hey, why don't we all meet back here later this evening, say around 6? Sure, 6 sounds okay. Kiba agreed. Yeah, the orange-clad boy was practically glowing with happiness. Well, see ya. Yeah, see ya then. Later. Asuma had a good feeling about these 3. Of course, final judgment would be reserved until after the test, but still. And as much as he enjoyed watching them together, he knew he'd have to force himself to stay away later that night. If they were going to use that time to prepare, it would be unfair of him to spy on them. After all, they'd need every advantage they could get come tomorrow morning. As Inuzuka Kiba made his way toward Training Ground 3 at 7:30 in the morning, he felt confident and excited about the upcoming test. He had slept well the night before and woken up a bit early to fit in a decent breakfast, because eating just before something that would likely involve strenuous physical activity was something only an idiot would do. The dog Nin's current plan was to arrive at the training field a bit early and use the time to warm up while waiting for the test to start. Arf RFF woof. Just last week, I would never have dreamed about being happy to spend time with the infamous Uzumaki Naruto and a member of the Uchiha's fan club, his white-furred partner spoke up from inside his jacket. I know, Akamaru. Crazy, isn't it? I mean, Who would have thought that a loud idiot like Naruto would be so fun to hang with? And Ino's really pretty neat too, as long as she and the baka aren't at each other's throats, he answered. The evening meeting had gone pretty well, except for his having to step in 5 different times to stop his teammates from killing each other. They had started off speculating as to just what the test might be and, combining stuff Hana Nisan and his mom had told him, a few things Ino had overheard her dad talking about over the years, and several minor details Naruto remembered from Iruka-sensei's lectures. Seriously, though, the boy's memory was just plain freaky when it came to sensei, especially considering that he had slept through more than half the stuff he remembered. They concluded that it would most likely pit the 3 of them together against Asuma-sensei in some form of combat. Once they figured that out, the genin of Team 7 made the obvious choice of figuring out where each of them stood in terms of ninja abilities, so they could plan more effectively. His blonde teammates had really managed to surprise him. When they did one-on-one taijutsu spars, Ino had kicked both boys' asses with her superior technique, until she started getting tired, anyway. And that Shintenshin no jutsu of hers had been just plain creepy. When she had gone to demonstrate it, Naruto had refused point-blank to be a target. Somehow, that had gotten the Kunoichi angry at him and led to their 3rd shouting match. It also resulted in Kiba being on the receiving end of the jutsu. Feeling his body responding to someone else's commands and not his own was the weirdest thing he had ever experienced. Then there was Naruto. He had always thought of the short blonde as nothing more than a weak, noisy loser who liked to exaggerate his own skills, boast about how he'd become Hokage, and pull pranks. Now though, it had started with his speech at Iruka-sensei's funeral. Something in the way he talked made it impossible not to realize just how true the words were, and he just sort of drew you in. After they had been put on the same team, when the 3 of them went to the roof for lunch, he had started really paying attention to the other shinobi for the first time. It was impossible not to notice the blonde, his clothes alone made sure of that, but there was a big difference between noticing someone and paying attention to them. What Kiba had realized during that half-hour together was that Naruto was a pretty fun person to be around. With how he was always so open about his emotions and thoughts, and that big grin that was usually on his face, you just couldn't help but like him. His ninja skills were nothing to scoff at, either. His taijutsu was really sloppy, sure, but he made up for it by just not staying down. The first time Kiba had landed a punch, the blonde had just shrugged it off like it was nothing and told him to stop holding back. The first time Naruto had landed a punch, the Inuzuka was on his back for 5 seconds before he was able to stand again. He had hated to admit it, but the smaller boy had him beat in terms of raw strength. Of course, he hadn't really had any other choice when his opponent, without seeming to really exert himself, had him held so tightly he couldn't even wiggle. That had been in their second match. Kiba had won the first thanks to his superior speed, but the second dragged on so long he had started to wear out. Of course Naruto, being the stamina freak he was, wasn't even winded. And after sparring, when they had shown each other their jutsu, the dog boy couldn't help but be amazed by the Kage Bunshin. The only thing more insane than the jutsu itself was the amount of chakra it required and the way Naruto could dish it out like it was nothing. No wonder he was always so energetic. Arf, I smell something interesting up ahead, his companion's message interrupted his musing on his teammates. Really? What? RFF. Wait and find out for yourself, something amusing, if Akamaru's tone was anything to go by. A minute later, he caught the scent as well. Ramen, fox, and sweat? Naruto was training? Now? Kiba decided to run the rest of the way and give the idiot a piece of his mind when he got there. Did he forget they all needed to be in top shape for the test even after he had been the one to force Ino to promise to eat something substantial for breakfast? He arrived just in time to see 4 of the blonde boys charge at each other, before 3 of them dispersed in puffs of smoke. The remaining version of his teammate noticed his presence and turned to face him, wiping the sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand. Hey, Kiba, morning. I was just doing a bit of training while I waited for you and Ino to show up. The dog boy was about to answer when, out of nowhere, a fist impacted powerfully with the smaller boy's cheek, sending him flying before he burst into smoke. Are you the real you, then? He asked, after seeing his teammate punch himself. Yeah, anyway, Asuma-sensei should be here in about 20 minutes. I'm gonna go relax over by the stone for a bit. By the stone, he meant the memorial stone, with all the names carved into it. The genin had noticed it last night when they were getting ready to leave. Oh. Hey, Ino, Kiba. Come look at this. The blonde boy was standing in front of the large, oddly shaped rock near the trees. They both took notice of his somber tone of voice. What about it? Ino asked. It has a bunch of names carved into it. The last one is Iruka-sensei's. The other two members of Team 7 had come to a silent agreement to not ask Naruto about what had happened that night. The pain was still obvious in his face and voice whenever the man came up. Hey, you're right, Kiba said, now standing next to the other boy. He could barely make it out in the fading light, but the final name on the stone was indeed Amino Iruka. Sensei's name was just carved in recently. It was the quietest either of the other two had ever heard Naruto speak. Really? How can you tell? Ino asked. He turned to her, blue eyes full of sadness in the dim light. The stone is rougher. It hasn't had time to smooth out any. Kiba spent a moment thinking about this before responding. You can see that kind of detail in this light? Wow, you must have good night vision. Still, I wonder what this stone is for. A memorial to all the fallen Konoha ninjas, maybe? Ino voiced the thought they were all thinking. Her answer came from behind the three genin. Close. Anyone who gives their life protecting the village has their name put on this stone. The solemn voice caught them completely by surprise. Ah, they spun around to find a tall, silver-haired man in Jonin garb. His forehead protector was slanted down to cover up a presumably missing left eye, and a mask covered the lower half of his face. Naruto elected himself to speak for the group. Who the hell are you, and what are you sneaking up on us like that for? I'm Hitaki Kakashi, and just so you know, I wasn't sneaking up on you. Would mean, not snee. Ino interrupted the much louder blonde. Kakashi? You're the sensei for Sasuke-kun's team, then? Forehead girl was telling me all about you and how you were 3 hours late for meeting them. The man's eyelid lowered exactly halfway, giving the eerie effect that his eye was smiling at them. What can I say? I got lost on the road of life. After giving the genin a moment to glare at him for the sheer lameness of his excuse, he continued. As far as being a sensei, well, it depends on whether my cute new genin are able to survive my test tomorrow. There's no need for me to ask who you are, though. The strange and sudden use of a comment that would have made much more sense earlier in the conversation confused Ino and Kiba to no end. The team knucklehead, though, seemed to take offense at something, if the abrupt shift in his posture and tone were any indication. And just what the hell is that supposed to mean? The tall man just did that creepy eye smile again. You're obviously awesome, his own trio of cute potential genin, of course. Anyway, I believe you three were looking at the memorial stone earlier. Please don't let me interrupt you. Their attention returned once more to the engraved, polished hunk of rock before them. Knowing just what it stood for and seeing the countless names that had been carved in over the years was truly a humbling feeling. This bunch right here, Naruto gestured to a group of about 400 names, separated by a small amount of blank space from the ones before and after it. This is everyone who died in the Kyuubi attack, right? I see the Yondaime, and 2 people who must have been Iruka-sensei's parents. Hearing the blonde speak so solemnly was something his teammates still weren't used to. Kakashi moved and kneeled down to look straight into his crystal blue eyes. Yes, they are the people who lost their lives fighting the monster during that terrible tragedy. He stood again, and everyone was silent for several minutes in respect for the dead. Then, as if by some unspoken signal, Team 7 departed all at once, each heading in a different direction. Kakashi stayed where he was. Ino came into the clearing about 5 minutes before the test was scheduled to begin. She had walked the whole way from home, knowing that she needed to conserve her energy. Last night had shown quite clearly just how lacking she was in terms of stamina, especially when compared to the boys. Speaking of the boys, they were currently sitting down on the grass by the training posts, leaning up against the hard wood. You two need to be more alert. What would Asuma-sensei think if he saw you dozing off like that when he got here? Her fellow blonde leapt to his feet with an indignant shout. Oi, I was alert. Yeah right, idiot, your eyes were half closed. She shouted right back. Ever since she had gotten teamed up with the knucklehead, he had taken the definition of annoying to a whole new level. The blue-eyed boy was about to retort, but he was silenced before even starting by the sudden arrival of Asuma-sensei. "What's this? Are you three fighting already? Well, I'm glad you're all so excited. Wouldn't it be better to save it for the test?" The young ninjas turned to face him, standing at attention and ready to find out just what they would be doing. It looked like he had foregone the cigarette today, probably out of courtesy to Naruto after the comment he had made during introductions. Much better. Now, like I said yesterday, this will be a very difficult test, and anyone who doesn't pass will be sent back to the academy. Repeating himself? Why? Surely he didn't think they would forget something so important so quickly. Hurry it up then. The three of us are ready for anything you throw our way. Yeah, we're gonna ace this test of yours, whatever it is. Right, Akamaru? Arf. Boys. Always so quick to be ready to fight, especially loud ones like those two. Oh, so that was it. Best play along then. Was she ever glad her dad had started teaching her psychology earlier that year? Ino moved to stand in between the two of them. Bring it on, Asuma-sensei. She could detect the faintest hint of triumph in the Jonin's chuckle. Gotcha. Now if only I knew just why you want us all riled up. Okay, for this test, the three of you will be up against me in combat. Well, it seemed their guess was correct. All those traps Naruto had set up would probably come in pretty handy soon. The three genin sank into combat stances instantly. Hold on a minute, I haven't finished explaining the rules. They returned to normal. You see, to pass this test, you have to land a hit on me, or something equivalent, in one fashion or another. Doesn't matter if it's taijutsu, kunai or shuriken, ninjutsu, whatever. You just have to land it or get me into a situation where a hit would be inevitable. There's a catch, though. Their heads perked up. 2 catches, actually. First, you only have until 8:30. And second, only the first 2 of you to hit me will pass. WHAAAAT? Hey, that's not fair. Grr RFF. Ino figured it out but decided not to let anyone know for the time being. Yeah, what happened to us being a team? Sorry, one of you's got to go back. That's the rules. He didn't look sorry. Naruto was angry. Grr. Stupid rules. When I become Hokage, that'll be the first thing to go. Kiba and Akamaru stayed silent, but were clearly just as upset. All right, Asuma-sensei said after a moment. Ready, set, start. The boys would have leapt off in opposite directions then and there had it not been for Ino grabbing tightly onto each of their forearms. And just where do you two think you're going? Ino, let go. You're wasting time. Kiba was a bit nervous. Hee. Sorry. It looks like we won't be working together for this after all. She smirked at Asuma-sensei. You idiots. The kunoichi shouted, removing her hands from their arms to bonk them on the heads. Pay a bit more attention, would you? Huh? Wah? Arf? She sighed. Yesterday, Asuma-sensei said that every 2 out of 3 teams fail this test. Now he's saying that 1 out of 3 genin fails it. So? The boys asked as one. So, he's trying to trick us. Remember how last night we guessed it would probably be a test to see how we work together? Well, we were right, just not the way we thought. Instead of seeing how we fight together, he's trying to how willing we are to fight together. Are we ready to keep working as a team, even knowing one of us won't be around much longer? Can we stay true to each other even when our dreams are on the line? That's what this test is really about, right, Asuma-sensei? The other 2 looked at her, then at their sensei, then back to her, then back to him again, waiting angrily for confirmation. She's right. Well, I gave it a try. Then he mumbled, but not so quietly that they couldn't make it out. I told Kakashi it wouldn't work on these 3. Anyways, you all pass. Good work, Ino, Naruto, Kiba, Akamaru. Woohoo. We did it. We passed. We're ninjas. Ino, that was awesome. Naruto did some sort of strange, excited victory dance. Then he hugged her, taking the girl completely by surprise. She was about to shout at him with what little air she had left in her lungs, when he just as suddenly let go, running over to Kiba. The dog boy backed up frantically. Naruto, I'm excited and all too, but I really don't want you to hug me. That seemed to calm the orange blob of energy down a little. Asuma-sensei spoke up again. Now while you have passed, I'll still need to evaluate your combat skills. I'm supposed to be your sensei, but I need to know where you stand before I can decide what to teach you. The genin of Team 7 listened intently. Now, I want you to start by coming at me individually, and yes, Kiba, you can use Akamaru. Then all of you at once, so I can see your teamwork. Now, who wants to go first? I will, Asuma-sensei, Ino volunteered. It made the most sense, after all. She had the least stamina, so going first would give her the most time to recover before the 3-on-1 fight. She stepped forward and shifted into the basic taijutsu stance taught at the academy as the boys moved back, giving her space. Don't hold back, he advised. She wasn't planning on it. Channeling chakra to her legs, she dashed forward, striking out with a quick right jab. It was blocked, of course, but the blonde swiftly followed it up by planting her left foot forward and transferring to a chakra-enhanced spin kick with the right. The Jonin leapt backwards slightly to avoid it. Ino, however, had thought a step ahead. During her spin, her left hand had grabbed a kunai, and she threw it at point-blank range. For an instant, she panicked, thinking the weapon would actually hit, only for Asuma-sensei to suddenly be deflecting it with a trench knife in his right hand. Amazing, she hadn't even seen a trace of movement, he was so fast. This time, the Jonin came at her, apparently wanting to test her defense, but Ino was having none of it. Dropping low, she went to sweep out his legs. The blonde didn't bother adding chakra to this one, as she hadn't planned for it to hit, just to get him in the air again. Of course, realistically, none of these blows had any chance of hitting unless Asuma-sensei let them, but never mind. Before his feet touched the ground, she tried for a straight punch to the stomach. Blocked again. Immediately, she followed up with a knife hand to the neck. The man punished her for leaving herself open like that with a swift knee to the side. Things continued in this fashion for about 10 minutes, her attacking, him blocking or dodging and giving her reminders whenever she left too wide of an opening, with the occasional kunai or shuriken thrown in to mix things up. Then he called a stop. Good work, Ino. You're quick and accurate, and you think ahead in combat. You need to not be quite so aggressive, though, as it tends to leave large gaps in your defense. Also, your stamina definitely needs some work, as does your overall speed. Go rest for a bit. The praise felt nice, and Asuma-sensei was definitely more helpful than Mizuki had ever been. She sat down on the grass next to her fellow blonde as their other teammate and his dog took her place. You looked really good out there, Ino. She doubted the boy even realized his words could be taken two different ways. Thanks, Naruto. She responded in between deep breaths. Then she turned to watch the Inuzuka and his partner. She hadn't really liked Kaba very much back in the academy. He was always too loud and never seemed to pay attention in classes. Unlike Sasuke-kun, so quiet and strong, watching everything around him with his captivating black eyes. Enough about Sasuke-kun for now though. There would be plenty of time to reminisce about her days in the presence of the Uchiha later. Right now she had a teammate to support. Teammate. It was weird, she would never have thought the dog boy would be so likable, in his own strange way. All that boasting and bragging he did was really just to cover for how insecure he really was. And no surprise either, since for the most part he had only had one parental figure, who wasn't even home very often and acted much more like a father than the mother she was supposed to be. His sister probably helped, but a sibling just couldn't fill the same role. Damn her father for making her learn psychology. Now she was being all analytical. The mind wasn't meant to be analyzed like that, it was far more complex to just be described. It had to be experienced. And as a matter of fact, she had experienced Kiba's mind briefly last night. It turned out there was much more to the dog boy than met the eye, especially when it came to his bond with Akamaru. And he was someone she felt she could trust as well. As a friend, he would be faithful, loyal, and supportive, helping her when she needed it and just being there to talk to in a way she wished she still had with Sakura. And in return, she would be a good friend to him as well. Okay, stop. Asuma-sensei's voice brought her out of her thoughts. She had completely lost track of time. The two of you work together very well, and you're perfectly fine in terms of your physical condition. Also, your knowledge and use of your clan jutsus is extremely advanced for a fresh genin. On the downside, though, you're much too straightforward in your attacks. Anyone fast enough would be very hard for you to fight well against. You also seem to be a little too dependent on Akamaru at times. While I know that the two of you are supposed to be together all the time, unexpected things happen fairly often on missions, and you need to be prepared. Okay, go have a seat. Naruto, you're up. The overly energetic boy leapt to his feet in excitement. Yes, finally I get a chance to show you just what I can do. Ready, sensei? Here I come. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Orange filled her vision, and in fact the entire clearing and some of the nearby trees. In fact, the only things she could see that weren't Naruto, excluding herself, of course, were Kiba and Akamaru. Then her blonde teammate started throwing himself at their sensei, sometimes quite literally picking himself up and throwing himself through the air. Last night, after returning home, Ino had spent the remainder of her time before bed thinking about the mystery that was the blue-eyed, orange-loving, yellow-haired, black hole of ramen of a teammate and come to a simple conclusion. Uzumaki Naruto was someone that made no sense. Or more like there were things about him that didn't make any sense. For one, he was, without a doubt, the most open person she had ever met. Whenever he talked or thought, his emotions would play out across his face and in his eyes and voice clear as day. Yet at the same time, there was an entire side of him she hadn't even known existed until she heard his speech at Iruka-sensei's funeral. When she had gone back over all the memories of him in the academy, something else odd had stood out. The constant boasting and bragging. Unlike with Kiba, this wasn't to cover up some kind of insecurity. Naruto being insecure was about as likely as the grass being blue and the sky green. So she had started to consider what other reasons he might have had, using everything she knew about him and the new side of himself he had first revealed at the funeral. And she had figured it out. Oh God, she had figured it out, even though part of her wished she hadn't. Because Naruto was so lonely. So painfully lonely, every day, all the time, for his entire life. So alone, and now she could see it. That loneliness in his eyes, always there, always so perfectly hidden unless you were looking for it. Even just remembering the way he had been at the academy, it was there, in everything he did, in every word he spoke. Now, though, he had the beginnings of friendship, and sometimes, like when he had smiled at her on the roof the day before, that insufferable loneliness would just melt away, and it was like the sun coming out from behind a cloud, spreading its light and warmth throughout the world. Just as the loneliness pierced straight to her heart, so did the happiness, that brilliant joy of his. And she knew, too, who it was that had saved the boy from his loneliness and given him that first taste of joy. She knew, because every time he mentioned Iruka-sensei, she could see it there beneath the sadness at his death. That same happiness. As confusing, and at the same time simplistic, as Naruto was though, as contradictory as he was, there was one thing Ino knew without a doubt. He needed a friend. A real friend, who would always be there for him no matter what, despite his idiocy and his annoyingness and his contradictory nature. And she had chosen to make it a goal to be that friend, because she had seen his smile, and it really did make the world a brighter place. Once again, her thoughts were interrupted by Asuma-sensei's voice. That's enough. The remaining clones poofed away, leaving a single grinning Naruto excitedly awaiting his evaluation. First, I have a couple questions. 1. Who the hell taught you that was taijutsu? She could hear the anger clearly in his voice, directed not at the blonde, but his incompetent instructor, who would have to be Mizuki Teme. His answer was short and to the point, and it was only because he happened to be facing towards her that Ino saw it, the flash of hatred in his eyes. And just like every other emotion Naruto experienced, it was powerful and deep. It was truly frightening, and she felt pity for whomever might have that look directed at them in the future. Then it was gone. I see. Well, the problem is that he taught you badly, almost definitely on purpose. In truth, you likely would have been better off with no instruction at all. I know someone who will likely be more than willing to help you fix this problem, though before I introduce you to him, you must promise me you absolutely will not take any advice from him on anything except taijutsu. We'll talk more about that later, though, as there was one other thing I wanted to ask you. Naruto, why don't you use any chakra to enhance your muscles? Naturally, this question caused entirely different reactions for the boy's teammates than for the boy himself. For all three, the first thought was a simple, huh? But for Ino and Kiba it continued, what the hell? While for Naruto it was, you can do that? Cool. The outward reactions were vastly different as well. The orange-clad boy used words. Huh? You can do that? Cool. The other just twisted their faces into identical expressions of pure disbelief. Yes, you can, Asuma-sensei answered. Channeling chakra into a muscle drastically increases the force it is capable of generating. The boy's expression changed from one of excitement to one of, "What the hell language did you just speak?" In other words, you can make your muscles stronger by sending chakra to them. But you have to be careful not to overdo it or you could end up seriously damaging your body. Anyway, why don't you give it a try now? Channel some chakra to your arm and chest muscles and punch me as hard as you can. The blonde boy did as instructed. Asuma-sensei shifted a bit when the blow connected, but that was it. Weird. What's weird? Did I not do it right, Asuma-sensei? No, you did it properly. It just didn't work properly. Probably something to do with an irregularity in either your chakra or muscles. I'll look over your medical records in more detail and see if I can figure it out. You don't need to worry, though, because in terms of physical strength you're already a bit above what most new genin have even with chakra enhancement. Now that those two questions are out of the way, I can give you a proper evaluation. Naruto looked excited. In short, you have an incredible amount of potential but are currently able to use almost none of it. You're strong, you have more chakra than just about anyone I've ever met. You have more stamina than someone your age should be capable of having. You recover extremely quickly and have exceptionally high pain tolerance. Your reflexes are definitely above average, and you're clever. Using Henge no Jutsu to change into a pebble is something I don't think anyone has ever thought to do before. The problems though are your horrendous taijutsu, the worst chakra control I've ever seen, and your tendency to not think about what you're doing. And while those are all major flaws, they're all things we can work on. Since I doubt you need any time to rest, I think we'll go straight on to the full team evaluation. Just so you all know ahead of time, this will be completely different. I won't be staying on the defensive almost all the time, and I won't hold back quite as much. Your goal is to incapacitate me in some way. It's now 9 o'clock, you have until 11:30. Ready? Begin. Naruto had apparently decided to take the initiative in starting the fight. 2 seconds after he had finished speaking, the Hokage's son found himself rained upon by countless short blonde boys for the second time that day. Unlike last time, though, he wasn't just going to stand there as they came at him. Instead, he took a more active role in thinning out the herd, all the while moving in the direction he'd seen his students retreat as soon as the orange swarm had appeared. Asuma couldn't help it, he found himself really liking his new genin team. It wasn't the bucketloads of potential he could see in them as ninja, or the way they had bonded together so quickly despite coming from completely different places, or even the part where he could see a bit of his younger self in each of them. Those were just bonuses. What made him like them so much was the will of fire in each one of them. He had seen it earlier in that instant after Ino had explained the test when they had all glared at him. A glare that showed just how deeply his father's principles had been ingrained into their young minds and just how determined they were to follow those principles. Right, this had gone on long enough. First double-checking to make sure the real genin weren't still somewhere in the crowd, the Jonin went through a string of hand seals. Futon. Kei's Bakuha no Jutsu. Wind Element. Wind Explosion Jutsu. The 360-degree blast of chakra-infused air tore all the remaining clones to shreds in an instant, leaving him alone in the clearing. He did a quick search for his students' chakra signatures and was surprised to only find 2 of them. Stopping to do a deeper scan, he found the third. Naruto had somehow managed to lower his chakra levels to below what was considered normal even for an academy student. It was only because the blonde's terrible control had him constantly leaking chakra even with this small an amount that the man picked up on it. No wonder the kid had always been so good at sneaking around to do his pranks. To most chunin, as long as he stayed out of sight and kept quiet, he would be completely invisible. Oh, now this was interesting. All 3 were in the woods spread out relatively far apart, but they were in a near-perfect triangle shape. Not only that, but each one had a single shadow clone with them. Brilliant. He goes after one of them, the clone with that one dispels, notifying the others, who then come at him from behind. Nice to see the supposed worst student in the history of the academy was finding creative uses for his newest jutsu. Alright, he'd go along with their expectations for now anyway. The bearded Jonin headed in Kiba and Akamaru's direction. He arrived at his destination only to be instantly beset upon by the Inuzuka pair, already both in Jujin Bunshin forms. He really hadn't been exaggerating when he had told the dog user he was good with his clan jutsu. Just as he had predicted, the others came in from behind within 30 seconds of his engaging the boy. Ino struck first, trying to take him from behind with a knockout chop to the neck. It might have worked if he were deaf. As it was, though, he settled for placing his elbow firmly between her ribs, knocking her away. He had told them he wouldn't stay on the defensive, after all. Immediately afterward, Naruto came charging at him, kunai in hand. He met the blonde with a swift punch to the stomach, only for him to disperse into smoke. The kunai he had been holding, however, didn't. And wrapped around the base was an active exploding tag. Tricky little brat. He leapt upwards and backwards, out of the explosion range. Kiba and Akamaru saw their chance and took it. The dog Nin and his companion launched themselves at him while he was still in midair. It was a nice tactic, one that even most high-level Chunin would have trouble getting out of. He let the blows connect. The bearded Jonin realized that might have been a mistake when Naruto, or was it another Kage Bunshin, came out of nowhere and threw a trio of shurikens his way. He deflected the first two with a kunai. The third missed. He turned to follow its trajectory only to see it about to slice through a wire he had somehow not noticed at all. Just before it broke, he followed its path only to lose it in the tree branches. He estimated, though, that whatever it was connected to was set up to hit the spot Kiba had redirected his flight towards. The moment he landed, a weighted net came into view falling directly on top of his position. As he took out his trench knives and began to cut his way free, he spotted Ino again. She was going through the hand seals for what he recognized as the Yamanaka clan Shintenshin no Jutsu. Surely she didn't think the net would delay him long enough for it to hit? Then, directly behind him, and right in the path of the girl's jutsu if he were to move, Naruto raised his chakra level back to what it usually was. Asuma turned to see the Kyuubi container smirking at him in victory. He couldn't dodge now, or the Shintenshin would hit the boy, and who knew what kind of effect that would have. This was it. Well, it was time his genin learned that ninjas didn't always play by the rules. He sent one of his trench knives sailing lazily in the kunoichi's direction, forcing her to dodge. But the remaining shadow clone intercepted it, using his own body as a shield. Shintenshin no Jutsu. Still one more option, though. He pulled a Kawarimi with Kiba. Of course, Akamaru was on him in less than a tenth of a second, and the swift assault bought the three genin the moments they needed to recuperate from their botched plan. They didn't give up just because of one failed plan, of course, but the later attempts weren't quite as well thought out or effective. As time wore on, Naruto started doing more of the work, giving his tired teammates a chance to recover. To be honest, the bearded man was beginning to get annoyed by all the shouting of Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. It was strange, Asuma mused, how he found himself looking forward to teaching the three young ninjas. He had put himself up as a possible Jonin sensei more to appease his dad than anything else. After what he had put the man through in his more rebellious phase, he had a lot of making up to do, even now, years later. He just wasn't really the teaching type, he was too laid back to be any good at watching over and guiding fresh genin. Or so he had thought. These three, though, he found himself almost excitedly looking forward to instructing. Almost. His plan had been to just keep everything normal, give them the test, go back to doing the occasional mission if they failed, or give them a few pointers here and there if they passed. But that was before meeting his new charges. He still couldn't believe he'd made himself leave his cigarettes behind just to appease the boys and their extra sensitive noses. I'll have to talk to Guy as soon as possible about Naruto, he thought idly while leaning out of the way of a flying punch from said student. Maybe he can include the kid in his early morning training sessions. But if he comes back shouting about youth, he chose to leave the mental threat unfinished in favor of dodging a kunai Ino had thrown before it deactivated its henge and returned to being a Kage Bunshin. He'd also need to see Kurenai. She could instruct them in genjutsu far better than he ever could. Maybe they could start some kind of shared instruction program for the new genin. Kakashi probably wouldn't join in, which was a shame, especially considering all the ninjutsu the man knew, but it wasn't a big deal. He'd share the idea with the other Jonins later, maybe ask for his dad's opinion on it as well. Oops, he had gotten so lost in thought that he lost track of some of the Narutos, including the original. He wondered where they could have gone, but there just wasn't time to search for them. Besides, he would just deal with whatever they might try when they showed up. Going back to his earlier thoughts, he'd need to teach them the tree climbing exercise soon. All three of them would be able to get a lot out of that, especially the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. They would also need to learn the different standard team formations and tactics because, while they seemed to work together with each other remarkably well, he put it down to them all having similarly assertive personalities. They'd also need to be able to work with other teams, should the situation arise. Other than that, and making sure none of them neglected improving their basic skills and abilities. Maybe he could introduce Naruto to Go. The blonde's unusual, out-of-the-box way of thinking would make for an interesting opponent. He probably wouldn't take so well to the more structured shogi, but Ino might enjoy it. Suddenly, two of the Naruto clones teamed up and used Gatsuga on him. Asuma had been so lost in thought that he was caught completely by surprise and couldn't avoid the hits. They didn't actually injure him, but they were disorienting enough that he needed half a second to figure out what was going on. Shintenshin no Jutsu. Just like with Kiba and Akamaru, Ino had hanged into Naruto. She had somehow peeled off the jutsu from just inches behind his back without his even noticing. There was no time to do anything before he felt his own will forcefully pushed to the side. Sarutobi Asuma, Konoha Jonin, son of the Hokage, and former member of the 12 Ninja Guardians, could do nothing but watch as his newly graduated students tied him up with extra-strength chakra-absorbing wire before giving him back control of his body. Naruto was standing directly in front of him. To the blonde's left was Kiba, Akamaru poking his head out of his partner's jacket, and to his right was the team's Kunoichi, still getting to her feet after releasing her jutsu. All three were smiling. "How is that, Asuma-sensei?" the short boy asked. He laughed. These kids would be something amazing when they were older. What the hell does grocery shopping have to do with being a ninja? Naruto complained again. Not that either of his teammates could really blame him, as they shared his feelings exactly. Of course, they didn't express them quite as often, but their glares at Hokage Gigi when he had assigned this mission told the boy they were just as dissatisfied. So far, in the 6 weeks Team 7 had been together, they'd done nothing but train and run these stupid errands. And occasionally go out for a meal together, usually at a barbecue place Asuma-sensei liked. Luckily, most of the staff didn't seem to mind the demon cantainer's presence, though some of the other customers had given him their fair share of glares. The food was pretty good, he had to admit. While he'd pick Ichiraku ramen any day of the week, Gigi's son had insisted that he needed more. What was the word? Sustenance, in his meals. "Oh, stop your whining. At least we're not painting another fence." Ino seemed to enjoy countering anything he had to say. Course, he'd always find some way to throw her own words back at her, and it would turn into a kind of verbal sparring match between the blondes that was actually kind of fun. Kiba was always there in case they started to get out of hand, though. "You just didn't like that mission because you got paint all over yourself," he retorted. "Well, that only happened because I was hurrying to try and fix your little experiment with contrasting colors before the client got back." She had a point there, but he had a better one. "Oi, the lady actually liked that art, remember? She even gave us extra pay for it. Let's see her get around that one." "Well, how was I supposed to know she was an artist?" "Sorry Ino, that one just wouldn't work." Well, the inside of her house was filled with paintings, all with her name on them. He waited to see what she'd attempt next. "Yeah, you're right. Guess I just didn't think things through enough." Giving up this early? That wasn't normal for either of them. Then again, maybe she was just so frustrated with these easy missions that she didn't feel up to continuing. Naruto looked over the part of the grocery list he was responsible for getting. Personally, he still thought it was crazy that Yamada-san didn't want them to get her any ramen, but he wasn't about to question the client's taste, or lack of it, in food. Whatever. Maybe they'd be lucky and Team 10 would be doing a shopping mission now too. It would be nice if he were to run into Sakura-chan. Course, that would mean a chance of seeing Sasuke Teme as well, but he could deal with the stuck-up bastard as long as it was only every once in a while. Out of their graduating class, only Teams 7, 8, and 10 had managed to pass the test. 1 out of 3, just like Asuma-sensei had told them. Over the past few weeks, they'd run into Hinata, Shikamaru, and Choji a lot more often than they had Kakashi's team, mostly because of the sensei switch setup that had started several days after the team tests. Right now, it was just Asuma-sensei and Kurenai-sensei in the program, but that could always change. "Hey, team," Asuma-sensei called out as he approached the waiting genin atop the Hokage monument. The bearded jonin liked to vary their meeting place from day to day and often took suggestions. Today's idea had come from Naruto. "We're going to be doing something a bit different this time, so follow me closely." He led them through the village towards the southern training grounds. Team 7 found themselves in Training Ground 13, one of the smaller training grounds, an open field with a stream cutting through the middle of it. But they soon realized that they were not alone. The blue-eyed boy recognized the other group of people. One of them was the red-eyed lady he'd seen standing next to Asuma-sensei when they were split into teams, and the other three were Shikamaru, Choji, and Hinata. "Morning," he said energetically, grinning at his former classmates. "Morning munch Naruto, Ino, munch Kiba." Akamaru let out an indignant bark at being forgotten. "Oh, and you munch too, Akamaru. This is so troublesome." "Hey guys." The lazy boy clearly wanted to be watching the clouds. What was up with that, anyway? Why couldn't he just enjoy life like any normal person? Hello Ino-san, Kiba-san, Akamaru-san, and Naruto-kun. And why was Hinata always so EIRD and quiet? He'd have to remember to ask Ino sometime. She was a girl, she might know. Before his teammates had a chance to give their own greetings, Asuma-sensei spoke up, directing himself first at Team 8. "Hello you three. I'm Sarutobi Asuma, Jonin-sensei," to Team 7. "Kiba, Naruto, Ino," he turned to us, then waved in the direction of the red-eyed lady. "This is Yuichi Kurenai, Jonin-sensei," to Team 8 and the best genjutsu user in Konoha. The Jonin Kunoichi took that as her cue to speak. "Thank you for the introduction, Asuma. Now you are probably all wondering what we are going to do together. You see, this man here," she gestured at him, "has suggested an experiment. 1 or 2 days a week, Jonin-senseis with genin teams will give their team over to each other for instruction in areas they specialize in. Once every 2 weeks, the participating teams will compete in some way to see where they stand relative to each other. Currently, Asuma and myself are the only 2 Jonins participating. Now, let's split. Team 7, come with me. Team 8, stay here." And so they found themselves following another Jonin. It wasn't for very long this time, just to the next training field. Once there, she began instructing them in the creation, detection, and release of genjutsu. She also thanked them for getting Asuma-sensei to smoke less often. Over the past few weeks of working with Kurenai-sensei, Naruto had found himself to have absolutely no talent when it came to using genjutsu. As a matter of fact, the best illusionist on their team, surprisingly, turned out to be Kiba. Not that the dog boy was anything spectacular, but the red-eyed Kunoichi had deemed him decent, while Ino was acceptable, and he himself hopeless. Not that he let it get him down, though. Because while he might not be able to cast the damn things, he had worked his way up to an acceptable label in detecting them and was undeniably excellent when it came to dispelling. Something about him having so much more chakra than his body could hold at any one time, and that making the chakra come out with a lot of extra force when he went to dispel a genjutsu, completely disrupting the fragile chakra creations as his chakra reached them. Not that that explanation had really made a lot of sense until Ino had told him it was like a fire hose being sprayed against a wall of toilet paper. Speaking of Ino, it turned out she was pretty good at spotting the illusions, even if she happened to be rubbish at getting rid of them. As for the bi-weekly competitions, they had won the first and lost the second. He never would have thought that the lazy Nara was so smart, or that Hinata's bloodline limit was so awesome. The third was scheduled for later that week. His reminiscing shifted when he noticed Kiba walking down the other side of the aisle. After a brief smile in his friend's direction, he thought about how their relationship had changed over the past month and a half. The 2 boys of Team 7 had become somewhat like what Naruto figured it would be like to have a brother. They competed with each other all the time but were never mean about it, and the winner wouldn't dream of degrading the loser. They also had fun just talking together about this and that, whether it was ninja related or even just what was going on in the latest issues of their favorite mangas. Sparring with the Inuzuka and his companion was also really enjoyable. They were pretty evenly matched as long as the blonde didn't go heavy on the shadow clone usage. Kiba tended to fight against him with lots of quick, powerful strikes, using his greater speed to get away before Naruto got a hold of him. Whenever that happened, he could usually use his own superior physical strength to force the dog boy to submit. As long as he could keep Akamaru away, that is. Of course, Kiba's hits, when they connected, never kept him down for long, but the short period of time would occasionally be enough for him to get a kunai at the blonde's neck for the most part. Their fights boiled down to this. The first one to make a mistake lost, or Kiba would lose whenever the fight dragged on too long. As for spars with Ino, the girl no longer kicked their asses quite as badly before she started getting tired, but she also took longer to get tired. The exercises Asuma-sensei had them do had seriously helped her stamina to improve. Of course, they had caused improvements in both boys as well, but nothing significant, unless you counted his own chakra control. The first time they had seen Gigi's son walk right up a tree, all three genin had their mouths hanging open. When he told them they would be learning how to do that themselves, it was like getting a free meal at Ichiraku's. Amazing, all of them, himself included, Kiba had gotten the hang of the exercise by his third try. On the opposite end of the scale, Naruto had managed to destroy 3 trees in his first 3 attempts. Once he had gotten the hang of it, though, tree walking was much easier for the orange-clad boy than either of his teammates, and not just because of his huge chakra reserves. Unlike what some people seem to believe, sticking to something with chakra did not negate the effects of gravity, so most genin needed to chakra enhance their muscles slightly in order to do things like effortlessly keeping their bodies parallel to the ground. Doing this at the same time as channeling the proper chakra to one's feet was apparently pretty hard, but the Kyuubi container didn't need to worry about that thanks to his advanced muscles. They still hadn't figured out what the deal was with those, either, but it was obvious by now that chakra enhancement didn't have any effect. He suspected the fox had something to do with it, though, because they were noticeably denser than muscles were supposed to be and capable of generating far greater force than should be physically possible, even taking into consideration their increased density. Not like he could ask the fuzzball or anything, though. It was just a sensation in the back of his head, after all. Besides, he had earned his strength through the countless hours of intense physical training he had put himself through every single day during the academy. Asuma-sensei had taught them a lot more than just how to climb trees, though. He had shown the genin one of the signature ninjutsus of Konoha, well, more specifically of the Uchiha clan. Kaden. Wokakyu no Jutsu. Unfortunately, the bearded Jonin, after seeing the results of their attempts, declared that he wouldn't teach them any more jutsus until the Naruto had enough chakra control to not obliterate everything around him and the other two had enough chakra to not almost pass out afterwards. Another thing Team 7's sensei had done for his students was introduce them to shogi and go. He said something about how it would help them with strategizing, but Naruto didn't believe him. Shogi was just too confusing, with all the different pieces that could only move in certain ways, or moved in different ways in different situations, and all the pointless rules that had to be memorized. Go he could only enjoy when he played against a cage bunshin. For whatever reason, everyone else always liked to sit around forever before making each move, then usually doing exactly what he thought they would do all along, or when they did go fast, they played so badly there wasn't really any point. His fellow blonde, on the other hand, seemed to really like shogi and had even started to beat Asuma-sensei Eevee once in a while the last couple weeks. Then there was Kiba, who refused to play either game unless forced to. He wasn't very good at Go, though, and barely better than Naruto when it came to shogi. Having finished going through his part of the grocery list, he could swear Yamada-san must be related to Choji's family in some way to need this much food. The ramen addict went over to the Seikek line to meet up with his teammates. "Find everything?" the blue-eyed girl asked. "Yup, you," he answered, grinning triumphantly. "No problem." When their remaining teammate was strangely silent, as was his dog, they both rounded on him. "Kiba?" said boy looked down dejectedly. "I couldn't find the garlic." Akamaru whimpered. Ino exploded. "You couldn't find the garlic? You with your sense of smell that's 100 times better than a normal human's couldn't find something that smells as much as garlic?" Naruto put a hand on her shoulder, restraining the girl before she resorted to physical violence. "Give him a bit of a break, Ino. With all these different scents packed into one large room and the ventilation blowing them all about randomly, it must be pretty damn confusing for him. It's bad for me, and Kiba's nose is at least 5 times stronger than mine." She made a frustrated sound. "Fine, I'll go get the garlic. You two wait here." The blonde stomped off angrily. "Thanks, Naruto. You're welcome." Hey, you know garlic repels vampires? Kiba gave him that look that meant he just said something unbelievably obvious, stupid, or weird. Idiot. Everyone knows that. Obvious apparently. Well, I didn't, the Kyuubi container muttered. That was yet another thing he could thank Asuma-sensei for. The man had almost immediately picked up on what he called Naruto's lack of basic education, most notably that he still had some difficulties reading. So he had made the boy do just that, since the best way to get better at something was to practice. At first, he had hated it, but he didn't really mind so much anymore. Sensei had made him read from books and scrolls almost constantly. Before bed, when relaxing, while running, doing push-ups, in the bathroom. And on all sorts of subjects, ninja-related or not, fiction, non-fiction, the dictionary. That one was an ongoing project. To make it more interesting, he would choose pages to read completely at random. Just about every type of book under the sun. Except those little orange books. Those he had actually been prohibited from reading. As a result, a lot of blanks in his general knowledge were slowly being filled in, and his vocabulary was expanding. He tried to use any new words he picked up as often as possible, so as to get used to them faster. I'm back, let's go check out. Ino dragged him from his reminiscing. He seemed to be doing a lot of that today. Reminiscing. It was almost like he were a character in a story, and the author was just using his brain as a way to get through writing a lot of long, potentially boring stuff as fast as possible and keep the plot and action of the story flowing while still getting all the important details to the readers. And the whole reason for his reading could have been so that the author had a much larger selection of words to choose from when writing from his point of view. Wow, that would be crazy if it were true. By the time he had thought this out, his teammates had already finished buying the food. That was the way they did shopping missions. Ino and Kiba would take care of the checkout, while he carried part of each of their shares of whatever it was they were buying. It had ended up that way because, the first time the team had had a mission like this, they had seen how the cashier had treated Naruto. When he explained that it was normal, they had insisted on, after he forced them out of the store to keep them from attacking said cashier, his not going in front of a cash register during missions, despite his protests that he was used to the treatment. For whatever reason, that comment had just made them angrier, especially Ino. He wasn't about to let his friends do something for him without doing something for them in return, though, so he had insisted on carrying some of their things in return. And that was why Naruto could be seen walking down the street with 8 bags of groceries held in his arms. Ah, Naruto-kun, how are you this youthful afternoon? Damn it all to hell. The one person in the whole of Konoha he least wanted to see him in his current situation. Hey, fuzzy brows. I'm good, how are you? My fires of youth are burning brightly today. Is this a youthful new training exercise you are attempting? Great, now Lee would probably turn up to their morning workout with 10 grocery bags full of rocks for each of them. He knew from experience that trying to convince the older genin that it was just part of a mission would be useless, so he went along with it. Yeah, he could swear the boy's pupils lit on fire. Yosh. In that case, my youthful friend, I shall prepare 24 grocery bags full of rocks, 12 for each of us, for our training tomorrow morning. Damn it, and he had been off by 2. Well, have a good time. It wasn't like he was opposed to the exercise itself. There were just more efficient and saner ways of doing the exact same thing. He ran off, probably to find the grocery bags and rocks. How can you stand to spend 6 whole hours with that lunatic every morning? Kiba asked as Akamaru returned from his hiding place inside the boy's jacket. No matter how strange he might be, Fuzzy Brows was still a friend. Hey, Lee's not like that most of the time, sometimes, occasionally. Okay, so he's pretty much always like that. He's still a decent guy once you look past the insanity and the spandex. Wait, scratch that, don't look past the spandex. The orange-clad boy had first met Lee and Guy Sensei 2 days after the team test. It was an experience he would remember for the rest of his life.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.